So for me, it was no death, only love, and no attachment, which was one of the biggest ahas for me when I got back, this non-attachment piece, because that's where you link that expansive love.
Hmm.
You see, we have attachment with love here, but on the other side, there is no attachment. There's just the pureness of.
Today we're speaking to Lee Papa. In 2008, she experienced a near-death experience. Today she's going to tell the story, and we're going to talk about consciousness and how to meditate.
Absolutely. So this was in 2008, and just a little pre-story, and that is that at that time I really was in a space of contrast. Things that my life was not really optimal. I wasn't happy.
Mm.
And I was sick all the time, and not major sicknesses, but enough that it was a chronic kind of thing. And I was starting to explore more alternative healthcare methods and easing suffering in more uh, spiritual ways, maybe even metaphysical or new age.
Mm.
And my husband at the time, we were really challenged in our relationship, and he was in a major car accident that just changed the trajectory of our lives. And my mom, who was already elderly at the time, was living with us. That was another journey. There are all these really beautiful little journeys that we have in our lives, right? And how they intertwine. And that relationship was one way that I thought. And then it was very different, which it can be when someone starts to live with you, or really when you are elderly, right? You start to shift. And so there's a lot of backstory about that. But this particular time, I was again very ill. I was getting some sort of upper respiratory thing, I thought. I was not feeling well. My husband was really seeking at the time, was really seeking some relief of his own torment that he was going through with his physical and emotional issues past the accident. And he went on a 10-day noble silence retreat. And he had asked me to please get some antibiotics, go to a traditional medical doctor, not a natural medical doctor, because he was going to go into this noble silence where we would have no communication whatsoever. And he wanted to just know that I was taken care of. We had a 2-year-old at the time.
Mhm.
And so I agreed, even though I was really trying to do things holistically, but it takes a little longer when you're kind of turning that ship around, right? So I said, okay. And as he was driving to Denver, we were in Las Vegas. I had gone to the doctor. He called me. I had just left. He says, I'm going in. I said, I have my prescription. I'm going to go take care of that. Good luck. Have a good retreat. And that was it. And I call it kind of like a universal chess game. Like I picture God moving all of these pieces around so that we can have these optimal experiences, and that experiences, whether they are perceived as good or perceived as bad, they are always for our highest and best. And so I know my husband was moved out of the picture for a 10-day noble silence, no communication, so that I could have this experience. Well, I wasn't getting better. And within a short period of time, days, I was really crashing. The antibiotics weren't working. I had gotten to the point where I was in bed. I wasn't remembering when I had had something to drink or eat. I was scared that my child was not being cared for, that I didn't know what he was doing. I felt kind of like I was in and out of consciousness. I got enough energy to contact my girlfriend to say, please come get my son, who was her godchild, to please take care of him while I recover. And once that was happening, and of course, my mom, who lived with us and who was always there, was like nowhere in sight. She had been sequestered in her room, and I didn't see her, couldn't get out a call to her. But when I was able to get to the door to answer it so that my son could be taken care of, I checked in on my mom, and then I went back to bed. And as soon as I guess my consciousness felt safe, I let go. I had already previously started to feel my spirit lift out of my body, but my conscious mind was saying, oh, there are things to take care of, right? Like my son will be running around the house and my mother won't know how to get in touch with my husband, and all of these things were kind of going through. So I'm a list maker. I'm also a Virgo. So I was like trying to organize things, right? Okay, so if this is going to happen, so I relaxed and I let go, and my spirit left my body. And in that instant, I was in this light, the whitest and brightest of light that you can ever conceive of. The closest feeling I can get to is being in a cloud, but that's not really it. It is the brightest and whitest of lights. And I was a sphere of light, no body, had no issues about not having a body. I felt free. I felt expanded, and I was happy, very happy, and not an instant of, oh, I need to get back to my body. And I was in this light, knowing that it was kind of an in-between place. Like I hadn't gone through a tunnel. I hadn't completely broken through, I believe, that it felt more like a train station platform energy, right? So I was somewhere getting ready to go somewhere. And then off in the distance, which is also kind of makes me chuckle because depth perception in the middle of just light is kind of a strange thing. But off to the distance, there were two light beings that were coming towards me, and they were morphing in and out of shape. So sphere to individual human form, but no features, no, like I couldn't see musculature or anything like that because they were so bright, these light beings. And one on the left was a little more masculine in the energy, the one on the right, a little more feminine, and they communicated with me telepathically. As one and then individually, and basically they connected with me, and it felt like they had a job to do. And although I don't know who they were, in other words, they weren't like a religious figure that I recognized, they weren't loved ones that had passed on. Now, maybe they were, but I just didn't recognize them as such. But I did have a resonance of feeling nurtured and cared for, but there felt like there was an authority there, like they did have this job to do. And we went through a process that is more of a relationship review and an empathic feeling review, which is also interesting because I came back with very strong empathic abilities. I did not see any visual, like a lot of NDEers will see 360-degree kind of life review of everything that's happened. That didn't happen. This was very specific about relationships of my soul group. And the energy of it would just wash over me, and I would just feel the most profound love and appreciation and the wisdom of knowledge that I received from the relationship. So it was just a yummy experience. And as it would dissipate, I would feel it fully. And as it would dissipate, then the next one would come and the same sort of feeling would happen. And oh, such gratitude and appreciation. And then it would just dissipate. And then I remember as I came back, I do remember the two, which was my husband at the time and then my child. So the curious thing about that was that my husband and I, like I said, we were really challenged in our relationship, but there was none of that in this feeling. There was only just appreciation and deep love and respect of the experience and the wisdom and knowledge gleaned. And no woulda, coulda, shouldas, no, is he going to get remarried? No, maybe if things were different, none of that. No judgment, no guilt, no anything. And then when they left my son, that felt very strategic to last, to wash over me. Oh, Hillary, that experience was just so pure, so much softer. Just the essence of it was amplified. Just pure essence of love. I was so grateful for the experience to be a mother, to birth this baby. He was only 2 years old, so there was not a whole lot of time, but just the experience was so precious. And yet, after that energy dissipated, I found myself in a space of like, oh, that was really amazing. That was great. Okay, let's go. So there was no attachment. The love was so profound. We don't have the vocabulary. I think we've been just kind of, I don't know, the pureness of the love that really is kind of been masked or programmed out of us or something, because it is so different. It is so pure, so unconditional, and we throw that around, right? Mm-hmm. Unconditional love. I don't think we can tap into that where we are here. And so I said, okay, let's go. Right. So much of my personality was definitely still on the other side in this tweener place. And they said, you have free will to go back or to continue on. But there's something very important at play here, that you need to have more information to make that decision. And that is that this being known as Luke in the book, your son, will not be able to fulfill his destiny if he loses his mother at such a young age. Apparently it had happened before. And so then with that, they wanted me to feel the feeling of what he would feel with the loss of his mother. And this was the only, and people perceive it as kind of a coercion, and I don't perceive it that at all. This feeling that washed over me felt like just shards of glass ripping through my soul. It was just the most excruciating emotional pain imaginable, that with an instant of that, you wouldn't want that kind of pain brought to anyone, much less your child. And so I said, okay, I'll go back. I'll go back and be this extraordinary being's mom until he doesn't need me anymore. We had a little bit of a negotiation of what some things would look like. And then, and I would do the work of the light. And then with that, it was an agreement, and I was back in my body. And I went from being on my deathbed, even though I was at home, I was that ill, and knowing that I could choose, to sitting up in bed going, what just happened? Because I didn't know what happened. I was calling it a fantasy of death. But in that moment of coming back and sitting up, I was so present and so in the moment. I was looking around the room with such awe at everything. Just seemed to be amplified and alive and full of life, just beautiful. Even inanimate things like the door and the hinges and the doorknob just held my gaze. It was just beautiful. And I was calling it, still do, a residue that was left on me. I could feel that I was definitely different. Something was still on me. And with that, I went through an exploration of finding out what this was through, I called my sister, who was studying metaphysics, and she had said it was an exit opportunity. That's what she called it. And then a spiritual friend of mine I communicated with, she referred me to a spiritual mentor of hers in Houston, Texas. And she's the one that said, textbook near-death experience. She said she had 2 or 3, I think. And she basically detailed, are you feeling this? Are you feeling this? Are you feeling this? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. She's like, that's a near-death experience. And she was the one, and I am so grateful to her that, Rosa Glenn Riley is her name, by the way, that she said, journal it, because it will slowly dissipate over a period of 2 weeks, which she was right on. And she said, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to get back there. So at least if you have journaled it, which again moved into the book, it is something that is just so precious. And that experience was more real to me than any other experience in this lifetime. And so everything is really measured against that for truth for me. And so that's my near-death experience.
You mentioned that you felt your soul or spirit leaving the body. How did you know that was happening, and what did that feel like?
Sure, great question. So you wanted to know, how did it feel for my spirit to lift out of my body? And again, back to that analogy of the universal chess game, I believe I was given the experience prior so that I knew what was happening. Prior, I had a Reiki session, my first Reiki session ever, and my spirit started to lift out of my body. I started to have an out-of-body experience. Now, at the time when that happened, very much a control freak, used control as a way to feel safe. A lot of us do that, when we haven't dealt with trauma in our past, right? And so I had 2 experiences all in the same hour of a Reiki session. where my spirit started to lift out of my body, and it felt so euphoric and so beautiful that it didn't scare me, but I was intrigued. So it started to happen, and I was like, what's happening? And I sucked myself back in.
Mm.
And then I was like, oh, this is really cool. So this is all going inside my mind while I'm having this Reiki session. And I'm like, I wonder if I can do it again. And so then I just let it happen again a little further out. I'm like, oh, this is so good. And again, euphoria and just a feeling of freedom, and then sucked myself back in. Now, during that, the gal that was doing the session said to me, are you floating yet? And I was like, I was such a novice. I thought maybe she could see my spirit floating outside my body. And so we had this conversation. It was very fun. But if I wouldn't have had that experience, that when the near-death experience happened, I might have had, I don't know, maybe it would have been different. But maybe also not, because it was so beautiful that there was no fear about it. The word euphoria keeps coming back up. Dr. Michael Beckwith uses this term or this phrase about when you leave your body, that it's like taking off a tight shoe. And it's such a great analogy, because we are such big energy and such big spirits that in the vessel that we call our bodies, we're restricted. And so when we are not in our bodies and we can just energetically stretch, it feels so yummy. It feels so expansive. It feels so truthful and whole. That's why people say when they come back to their bodies and they have to get in the body, why sometimes it's painful.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even hear a popping sound. I've heard people say that, like you pop when you come out, you pop when you go back in. I don't recall any kind of popping sound. Mine was more fluid, just a lifting out. And so that's the best way that I can describe it.
Yeah, just to go backwards a bit, I understand that euphoric feeling from my second experience, not the first one through the tunnel, but the second one when I was going up into this light. It was just,
Is
I
that
wish
the
I
one where
could
you
grasp.
had the angels singing?
No, the angels were the
Oh,
tunnel.
oh,
Which I didn't have a euphoric feeling with. I was more like curious about this singing that just gets louder and louder.
yeah, but that's what it feels. It feels, like you're separate.
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey about being here, is to realize that we're not separate.
Yeah.
The three takeaways that I had, three major takeaways from that experience is, like you were saying, there's no death. So there's no fear of death. And there's only love. There was no feeling of judgment. Now, I don't know for sure about that piece, because I didn't go all the way over to the other side. And maybe the things that I've done in my life are not to the point of major judgment. Maybe I have asked for forgiveness. Maybe I've forgiven myself. Whatever the journey is, I don't feel like I'm going any place but there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was no death, only love, and no attachment, which was one of the biggest ahas for me when I got back, this non-attachment piece, because that's where you link that expansive love. You see, we have attachment with love here, but on the other side, there is no attachment. There's just the pureness of love and the wisdom of the experience. And I had somebody ask me, like, can you describe that love? And like you, I really was not connected religiously with Jesus, but post near-death experience and plus 10 years, that has changed, because I've reached a point of that connection, of the energy that is the pureness of Jesus and of Jesus, and want to have another near-death experience so that, I can hang out with him. But that non-attachment love, and the way that you could conceive of Jesus loving you, that's the closest thing that I could get to describe that kind of love. I was gifted an experience post near-death experience. I've had some extraordinary supernatural things happen, and each one brought such a beautiful level of understanding that the one that I'm describing now that you kind of sparked was a friend of mine was transitioning out of the blue, and he came to me, and I felt him in everything. And it was so visceral. I was bawling my eyes out, but not in sadness, in just the pureness of the love and the experience. He was in the clouds, he was in the trees, he was in the air, he was in everything. And when I even try, I get emotional because when I tap into that experience, it's extraordinary. And he was a dancer. He still is a dancer, he tells me. But I knew him as a dancer. And so he was dancing, like it was like the energy of dancing in the cosmos. Can you imagine having that experience, right? We're so small and restricted in this experience of contrast, but it's purposeful. And as painful as it is, we did choose it. We chose it to be here. And especially now, in all the heaviness of the contrast, we chose to be here to light up the world, to understand who we are, and to give support in the experience of our evolution. And we're here for the big show.
It's like a stage.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. So I just got a nice rush of energy.
Where is our consciousness located? Do you know? I'll give you an example. It got me thinking because I've, and you may have read it as well or seen it, is this NDEers often talk about as they're passing, the light is in the top right-hand corner of the room, the tunnel, or if that's the thing that they see, the top right-hand corner. And that fascinates me because I think, I wonder if that's where, you know, wherever we are, the top right corner, wherever we're looking, right? Is that where consciousness flows from? Yeah.
I can just give you my opinion of that, which is I love this discussion about the top right of the room. You see, when I came back from the near-death experience, I came back with more heightened senses. My intuitive abilities, my connection to non-physical, but it all comes from the right part of my consciousness. So it drops in. I can decipher what is my thinking mind, my conscious mind, and what is from universal source, my higher self, Holy Spirit, Creator God. It drops in. And it took time to really build that muscle to understand. It's like learning a new language, right?
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone. But for me, as I developed all of this, I was learning this language. And so I know it always comes from that part of my consciousness. Boom, it just drops in. There are so many words that are intertwined, and conscious mind, subconscious, unconscious. And people have, even though there are distinct definitions, people they tend to muddle a lot of that. And I think it's all a journey, you see. So what we know to be true today with new information would be different from what we know to be true in 6 months or a year, right? We know that we are always evolving. And if you're not stretching your belief system, if you're not allowing for new information to have you stretch your belief system or change your mind, then you're atrophying. You're atrophying your mind, your body, and your spirit. So I highly encourage everyone to leave room to say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. Or this is not what I know to be true today. Whatever language you use, because that's the information that you had at the time, and then you start to expand, right? That's why we have scientists that are constantly seeking and searching to know, have new understanding.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm a spiritual being on this planet, always seeking. I want to make known the unknown. I want to be, a detective, a spiritual detective, and find out what's the next thing. So here's a case in point. There is a study, a book called A Course in Miracles. Are you familiar with it?
Yes. Yeah.
So I was introduced to the Course in Miracles when I had, after my near-death experience and when I had the wellness center, and it never resonated with me. Oh, it was kind of Jesus kind of involved, just never really resonated. I still had some healing to do about my Catholic upbringing. So it wasn't the right time. It didn't mean that that book wasn't truth. I was not in alignment for that truth yet.
Yeah.
So I had all of these things to experience and to grow to get me to the point where, and I bought the book years ago, but I had 10 years of experiences to go through before I was ready to say, oh, that's really resonating for me right now. And again, the universal chess game brought me to all the people and the places and the things to get me to where I needed to be to say, I need to read that book now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just finishing up Gary Renard's book called, are you familiar with it?
Yeah, yeah,
Disappearing of the universe, disappearing of the universe.
disappearing.
Highly recommend it. But in that, he's referring back to the Course, saying that the Holy Spirit is really your higher self. And I wouldn't have been ready to hear that until I was ready to hear that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So one of my favorite phrases is take what resonates and leave the rest, because it just might be a seed for you later. It could be a seed for 10 years later.
Yeah.
But if you judge it and if you push against it, and this is why I'm a mindfulness trainer, because mindfulness is a big thing for me. Mindfulness equals awareness and non-judgment. So that whole non-judgment piece, Spirit told me that it was imperative for us as humans and as humanity to stop judging. So we needed to start getting back to basics and using things like mindfulness as the platform, because we can't get to the next level if we're still judging, right? So who do we judge the most?
Ourselves.
Everybody gets that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start with ourselves in non-judgment. Start healing this. Stop being the victim. Stop blaming everybody else. And look at the gift of the contrast and what you chose to come here to learn.
Yeah.
And then I'll take you to the next step and the next and the next step.
I found too with judgment, when we stop judging ourselves, it's like a bar graph. So we've got judgment of ourselves on the this one, and then judgment of others. Oftentimes what I've seen with myself and clients is when the non-judgment of ourselves goes up, the non-judgment of others goes up. It's
Absolutely.
like you can't.
Absolutely. That's why you have to start with yourself.
Right.
Because you can't say, oh, I'm going to stop judging people. And then every day, we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts in a day. Some of us are overachievers, have about 90,000 thoughts in a day. How many of those do you think are less than optimal self-talk from the critic? All that judgment, non-stop judgment all day long. Oh, but I'm going to not judge others while this is all going on? No way. That's why we have to start with ourselves in that piece of non-judgment. And the byproduct of that is you stop judging others. The psychic ability and being able to hear what people are feeling and thinking, like any of these, I call them superpowers, right? We all have them, by the way. We're all superheroes and we all have superpowers. Some are just more amplified than others. And when you do your healing work, you open that up, just like as a byproduct of the non-judgment, it's a byproduct. You just start opening up these other senses. When I came back, some of these were just automatic. I had reached a higher level of vibration, I guess, and it just opened some of these things up and this communication. And although it's amazing, it's also, it's a blessing and a curse, right? So I learned that, I think the first time I realized it is when I was telling my husband at the time about the near-death experience, and I could hear what he was thinking, and it wasn't loving and supportive. It was judgy. And but the beautiful thing is that I had no attachment to it because I had just gotten back. So I still didn't have, I was in that 2-week euphoria period. So I had no judgment towards him, and I had no attachment to what he thought about it or me or what anybody thought about me. And so it was like, oh, okay, you don't believe me. That's okay. And then I heard other people, and that's when I decided not to talk about it. I couldn't really manage the judgment because I could hear, somebody was saying something to my face, but I could hear what they were saying in their head. And that doesn't feel good. And so if you are a sensitive, and I don't mean boohoo sensitive, I mean, energetically sensitive person, and then that's amplified through one of these extra senses, being empathic, you feel a lot. And so I had to learn how to navigate these extrasensory things from the place of the observer and not the participant. So it's one of the things I teach about, is that when you are in the middle of chaos and the tornado of whatever drama or trauma is going on, you are leaning in and you are the participant. But if you lean out and be the observer, the mindful observer and non-judgment, you have a better place to navigate from. So I shut some stuff off. It's like I just had like this board and I'm like, nope, not going to do that, not going to do that, not going to have that. We're going to shut those off for right now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna like, dim this one down, turn that little knob down, and you do have control over that. Now, what I decided is I only want that stuff when I'm working with clients. I only want that stuff when I connect with Creator, God, Source, the Divine Universe, Spirit, Holy Spirit, and say, I need guidance now on this. Where do you want me? What is for the highest and best of that person, or for my experience, or whatever. And so I've learned to navigate those things from that space, because you can very easily fall right back into the victim mode, which you might have dug yourself out of, and then you've reached this level of understanding or expansion, and you have these extrasensory things, but then all of a sudden you see it as a curse. And being, I can't tell you how many empathic beings there are on the planet, and then so many of them use it as the bad side of the coin, right? Like, oh, I feel too much, I can't, or I can't go out in crowds. And I was part of that. I got that.
Yeah.
But you have to own it and use it for the gift that it is. It's just like your eyesight. It's like your hearing.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't want to see something, you divert your eyes. You don't want to hear something, you turn it off. It's the same sort of thing. You have control over these gifts, these extra senses. Use them for what you want to use them for, that is to the highest and best. And there's going to be others that are going to really come into play. More people are going to be telepathic. More people are going to be able to bilocate or remote view. And there are other things that are coming down the road, because we're starting to become aware of who we truly are.
What's, if you're open to sharing, what's your meditation practice?
Sure. So meditation is imperative on so many levels. Even at its third dimensional reality, it's a great stress reliever. And there are many forms of meditation, and find one that works for you. Don't blame meditation if it's not working for you. You find something that works for you. I find with beginners, the best meditation is a guided meditation. And it's funny, when we were chatting before we started recording and you were telling me about your experience with the water, I have a meditation called Limitless Possibilities that I'm going to send you, because I think you're going to resonate with it, because it has to do with water. So you did ask me about my own practice, which I'll answer. My own practice now is very different from what it was years ago when I first started. Now I sit quietly and I can get to a place of nothingness very quickly. And it doesn't need to be, 30 minutes long. I can get to where I need to be and sit quietly for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I don't. So my practice has also evolved into communing with Creator, and I'm just very purposeful in not going to the nothingness, because I've already been in the nothingness. So I want to commune with creation, and I go through this process of moving through the dimensions to get to the place of being with Creator. And it's amazing, because when I get there very fast now, my face changes. I can feel myself smiling. Sometimes tears come down my face. It's just beautiful. It's home. But let's go back to helping people get there through the stages, right? And I find that everybody wants to conquer, achieve, and overcome, because I was like that as well, right? So, that meditation thing sounds like something I got to do. So I want to do it, and I want to be an overachiever at it. And the universe is laughing, because it's the antithesis of that. It's a practice, right? You could practice your whole life. You said it, monks practice their whole lives, right? So it's not something to conquer, achieve, or overcome. It is just showing up for yourself in a consistent manner. So 3 main reasons why people don't meditate. 1, I don't have enough time. My most beloved meditation is 6 minutes long. So I ask you, do you have 6 minutes to meditate every day? And if somebody is saying no, I would say we have another conversation to have, because 6 minutes in your self-care is nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So it is about the consistency, not the amount of time that you meditate, especially in the beginning. And what I found is it's kind of like a bell curve, is that you start with a small amount of time. So let's say 5 or 6 minutes. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so amazing. Things are aligning. I don't feel stressed. Things are just working out. I feel kind of euphoric and blissful for no reason. I didn't win the lottery, but I'm super happy. And then you start wanting to meditate more and more and more. And then you realize, oh, I can get the same effect without meditating now. I can get the same effect by just being in a quiet space and getting to that space of meditation, that nothingness, right, on my own. So you're going to find your own journey in that space. But the more you resist, the more you're going to struggle. So it is in the surrender of just showing up for yourself. So when I teach meditation in the meetings and events industry, I go to conferences and I teach meditation and mindfulness. And when I'm there, I'll say, even if you were sitting in this chair for 20 minutes without your phone attached to you, bravo you, you're in practice. It may not be something that you've gotten to. You might have not got to a place of meditation, but you're in practice because you showed up for yourself. Keep showing up for yourself consistently over time. So first one was not enough time. Second one is I'm not doing it right. So that's when we lead to you're doing it right because you showed up for yourself. You will evolve by showing up for yourself consistently. And the third one is can't shut off the monkey mind. How many times have we heard that, right? That mind chatter, I can't shut off my mind, blah, blah, blah. So stop trying to shut off the mind. In my guided meditations, I walk you through this, the wording is, if a thought comes in, no need to resist it and no need to grab hold. Whatever it is, you will remember it when it is needed. Just allow it to move on by like a slideshow. There's a thought. You're the mindful observer. Oh, it's just a thought. Just like, think of it as outside of yourself, just going by. It's just a thought. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, look at that hungry thought. Okay. Bye-bye now, right?
Yes.
So it's a fluid practice. But if I would say, which I did when I first started meditating, oh, I'm hungry. Wonder what I'm going to have for lunch. Oh, stop thinking, right? Right? So that all that resistance is not going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So just give yourself permission to have whatever experience you're going to have in your practice. So I hope that helps.
I did the same meditation that your husband at the time went to, the 10-day Vipassana.
Uh-huh.
And I remember in that meditation, if you concentrate on your nostrils for 3 days, right?
Right.
And
that's right. And the breath.
And the breath. And at one point, and out of the 10 days, it was up and down. It was a roller coaster. I love it. I hate it. I love it.
Life.
Life, right?
Right.
And I remember at one point we're in meditation, maybe an hour or two in, and suddenly I was aware that my thoughts were just dark and crazy and have run off and into nowhere land, and I noticed it. And I said to myself, who's in control here? And in that moment, that was a life-changing moment. It was
huge awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Worth the 10 days.
Yes, it was worth the 10 days. It was. Yeah.
I look forward to doing it myself one day. I know it's not quite time, but I think it will. I think it takes you to next level.
It does. Yeah, I think it does. When I came home, this was a long time ago now, but when I came home, I remember thinking, I'm never doing that again.
It's kind of like a marathon or
right?
childbirth.
Yeah,
right.
and
painful,
and
but
then I
you
needed
kind of start to forget.
Exactly, and I needed time to integrate it, and now I want to go back.
Things that we learn about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is the journey, you see, is to do all the inner work, to become your own best friend, to uncover and peel away all the crusty stuff from past experiences and traumas to get to the gooey center of your connection with source energy and be full, because we tend to feel that vacancy and then the third dimensional land, the earth experience wants to fill it with everything, wants to fill it with food and with relationships and with social media and phones and fill it, fill it, fill it, fill it. But it can never, because it's just like it's masking what the true seeking is. The true seeking is the connection with source, connection with God.
Yeah.
Because once that connection is made, you're never seeking. So it's a beautiful, experience to go through self-discovery. You're taking, supplements and you're feeling on fire. You've got so much energy. You've lost weight. You feel amazing. Oh, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
You're going to the gym, you got muscles, you see a waist again, and then stop going to the gym or stop working out or whatever, right? It's human nature. We are fascinating beings.
Yeah.
Truly fascinating. And it's fun to navigate the world experience from a place of observer, because you realize how magical life is and how funny it is as well. And you don't take things so excruciatingly serious. And then you see the contrast in the world from a very different perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
It was
speaking.
fun. Thank you.
Where can, first of all, your book, where can people find your book?
Amazon.
Mhm.
Temple of All Knowing is the name of the book. An exploration of life, death, and spiritual wisdom through a near-death experience. Just finished the audio book, so you can get the audio version. So it's paperback, Kindle, audio. I think I sent you my Linktree link because I have an Amazon storefront that has all my recommended reading and some fun things and holistic supportive products. And you can always reach out to me via my website, leepapa.com. That's LEEPAPA.com. And I did want to mention also in the Linktree is Insight Timer, because we were talking so much about meditation. And I do have some free meditations on Insight Timer. It's a really beautiful app. It was one of the first ones. The pureness of their intention is still there, why they do what they do. And I love being associated with it. And my meditations are all free. You can donate if you want, but have access there, because there's also thousands of instructors. So if you don't particularly care for my meditations, don't play meditation. Find somebody that you like and just keep exploring and keep practicing.